I have some recruiting news.
You are Locked On Trojans, your daily podcast on the USC Trojans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fight on, everyone. I'm your host, Mark Holkin, and thank you for making Locked On USC your first listen. Whether you're watching this show on YouTube, wherever you want to download your podcast, always remember the show is free, and always remember how much I appreciate your support. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. So visit FanDuel.com/locked on to get started today. The first official visitor weekend, it's come, it's gone, rearview mirror, it's out of here. And so far, anybody who took their visit to USC, there was 11 of them. No one's committed yet. Are you disappointed? Or are you okay with that? How has recruiting changed with the advent of NIL and the transfer portal? I mean, the short answer is a lot, right? But back in the day, certain programs, certain coaches, they would want the young man to kind of make their commitment known. Hey, you had a good time. You're planning to come here, right? Okay, let everybody know. Get out there, make it public. Does that even matter today, though? Right? How much do public commitments matter? How much weight do they still hold? I think they still hold a lot, depending on the value financially. Don't get me wrong. I think you would still rather have guys committed than not committed. So the fact that USC's got 12 guys committed so far for the class of 2025, that's a good sign. They're halfway there. Actually, it doesn't matter how many you sign in a season. Remember, the hard number you got to look at, 85-man scholarship limit. That's the number. So if you got 32 spots available, line up, hand them out. But again, there's so many different types of enticing inducements that are out there right now. Here's why maybe no news is also good news. Depends on what side of the fence you're sitting on with this. I'll give you some examples. So we know USC held their first official visitor weekend. Georgia had one also. This was their we want our guys back official visit weekend. Isaiah Gibson was out there. Justice Terry. They were both in Athens over the weekend, and both of them got the full court press. Both had, their little special one-on-one meetings with their head coach Kirby Smart. The longer no one decommits from USC, I think the better the chances are that Isaiah Gibson and Justice Terry, they stay pledged. They remain Trojans. We're now 48 hours or so out of the official visits. And so far, Justice Terry, Isaiah Gibson, they're holding strong. Now, according to one of the Georgia on 3 site guys, this is what they wrote after those 2 visits. I thought you might find this interesting. Because remember, they will be coming to USC for their official visits later this month. But this is what they said about Justice Terry. No sense in beating around the bush and not touching on the biggest name on campus all weekend. The buzz remains steady on Terry. Likely no sudden movements, and Georgia continues to be a major factor. That's been the case since the flip. This is one the dogs will continue to try and whittle away on as the summer stretches on, and will likely have to battle into the fall 4. This weekend certainly didn't hurt our chances, and Rusty Menzel mentioned even some lengthy conversations. For now, it seems the word is holding steady, and they went with trending. They have it as even, USC and Georgia. I tend to disagree. The fact that Terry left Athens and he's still tied to Eric Henderson's dogwood kennel, that's a great thing. And as each day passes, if you're Kirby Smart, you're thinking, man, didn't get it done the second time. They're still the hometown favorite. Don't get me wrong. I mean, they can, Justice Terry can take the drive over there anytime he wants. USC's a little bit further away. But again, the longer it goes, the better it is for USC. As far as Isaiah Gibson is concerned, this is what they said. The smoke around Gibson has been consistent over the last few weeks, and it's that I'd be a bit surprised if he landed in Los Angeles in the end. Still, he remains committed to the Trojans as of this writing. Georgia put on a major push over the weekend, which was to be expected, and it feels like this is one trending much heavier in favor of the Dogs than Terry at the moment. Of course, that was the case going into this as well, trending up. Look, I'm not sure where this feeling is coming from. Maybe it's a whole Steve Whitfong putting in a crystal ball prediction. I haven't seen any quotes from Isaiah Gibson that are making me sweat, that have me concerned, sitting on the edge of my seat. In fact, just to remind everybody, all my everydayers who watch Locked On USC every single day, Isaiah Gibson's mom has been very outspoken. She's considering, she wants to move to Southern California. I think she mentioned San Diego specifically. So, hey, you know what? I think that last part about Isaiah Gibson on the Georgia site, that was just one of those kind of vague, feel-good, throw-in story to kind of make the Georgia fans, the faithful, kind of feel good, so they don't start pooping all over their message board. Look, right now, USC is in the lead for both Justice Terry and Isaiah Gibson. Don't let anybody tell you differently. Finally, I got a couple more notes before we close off this segment. You know who else was in Athens, Georgia over the weekend? 4-star safety Lagonza Hayward. Now, he said he's set to make his announcement or his commitment on August 7th. He put out his 7 finalists: Alabama, Florida, Florida State, Tennessee, South Carolina, Georgia, which that's where he was over the weekend, and USC. Okay, I'm just going to kind of rip the Band-Aid off right now. He's not going to be a Trojan. USC is in a much better spot with, they already have Drake Hilton Stubbs, and then they also just got done hosting Trey McNutt and Jonah Williams. I think that's where USC's really kind of, I think those are guys they have higher on their leaderboard. One other player who had more, I think it's, I'll give a more positive spin. Offensive tackle Aaron Dunn. He spoke really highly of USC coming off of his official visit. He said, the coaching staff is probably the most impressive part about the program. I can see myself getting all the development I need to get to the next level. USC is high on my list. This would be a huge recruiting win for the Trojans, and it's at a position of need. So remind everybody, he's 6'7.5", 290 pounds. He plays for Spanish Fork High School in Spanish Fork, Utah. The On3 recruiting predicting machine. USC's got a huge lead. Okay, big lead over Oregon and Utah. He also has offers from Texas A&M. Other SEC schools like Tennessee and Florida are also involved. But right now, if I was a betting guy, I would say Aaron Dunn's probably going to commit to USC before everything's all said and done. No pun intended. Yeah, there was pun intended. That was kind of forced. All right, so there's your recruiting news and notes coming out of the first official visit weekend. Some of it comes from other places, but it affects USC. But, again, what are your thoughts on recruiting? Do you still follow it religiously? Are you still excited? Or has too much change come about? Hit me up in the comments section. Let me know. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster, and they do it for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 8 billion professionals. That's billion with a B, which makes it the best place to hire. And hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses, they get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. And thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Are you watching Fox Sports, ESPN on your TV all day? At some point, you're turning it down, hitting that mute button because everybody's yelling and screaming. Do me a favor. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories and without all the screaming. And Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis. It brings you opinions and news. And it's streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We talk about the quarterbacks, we talk about the wide receivers, running backs, offensive line. I'm going to talk about the quarterbacks again, but I want to look at it from a different angle. We'll look it up. Which quarterback will lift USC's ceiling the most? Right now, there are two camps. You've got Miller Moss, the incumbent, who has seen it all, at least at USC, the highs, the lows. He's smart, very cerebral, uh, athletic enough to be QB1 at a school like USC. He's not just some throw-in guy. The other camp, you got Jayden Maiava, redshirt sophomore, 6'4", 220 pounds, bigger, stronger, faster than Moss. I think everyone would agree. Bigger, stronger, faster in football, you have a winning recipe. It's a good combination to have. However, like any recipe, there's some nuance involved. Not every oven works the same. Not all tomatoes are the same. Flour, you know what I'm talking about. You spend any time in the kitchen, you know exactly what I'm referring to. I mean, a lot of it depends on, how good are the ingredients that you're using. When you're playing quarterback, who is more familiar with player tendencies, that type of stuff? And especially when you're playing quarterback, you want somebody who is cooler than the other side of the pillow when the heat is getting turned up. When the rush is coming, defense is getting after you, ears pinned back. You need to have someone who's cool, calm, collective. I mean, your first instinct as a quarterback, protect the ball, right? Live to play another down. Or, is your first instinct to take off and kind of get what you can, including, sometimes, with the risk it, you're going to turn the ball over. I've seen both of USC's quarterbacks play. I think it's a fair description to say that Miller is probably a much more stay in the pocket type of guy who likes to use the fine ingredients that USC went out and shot for. Although I don't forget, at one point last year, kind of want to remind everybody, and I know it was early in the season, but Miller had more rushing touchdowns than Caleb Williams. It was coming in mop-up duty. I get it. Nevertheless, just want to throw that out there. Jayden has more starting experience than Miller Moss. He had that at UNLV. Also, remind everybody he was the Mountain West Conference Freshman of the Year. David Ubben of The Athletic. He seems to think that Jayden Maiava, Caleb Williams, very similar. They've got a lot more in common than just being transfer quarterbacks who ended up at USC. He said this. This was back in April, before the spring game. Jayden Maiava was one of the more interesting quarterback transfers. He mentioned this on one of the Athletics college football podcasts. You know who he kind of reminds me of in terms of skill set, playing style, just running style? He said, a lot like Caleb Williams. Like there's a lot of commonality there, end quote. And then he asked kind of the rhetorical question: is Maiava the next guy, or is he the guy for right now? Had Jayden stuck with his original transfer from going from UNLV to Georgia, he would have been the next guy, right? Right now, Carson Beck is their guy. The door at USC's open just a little bit, not a lot. It's kind of like the door's been closed, but nobody made it go click. You know what I'm talking about. So since Ubin was comparing Jayden Maiava to Caleb Williams, let's look at some stats just for comparison's sake. Last year, 2023, Jayden completed 63.5% of his passes, 3,085 yards, 17 touchdowns through the air, 10 interceptions. On the flip side, Caleb Williams completed over 68% of his passes, 3,600 yards, 30 passing touchdowns, 5 interceptions. I have no doubt that Lincoln Riley will have his Midas effect, that Midas touch. He'll help Jayden improve on those numbers. And I have to admit, when you watch the two play, when you watch their film, just from a mobility, athleticism point of view, you can see it. I can see those similarities. Now, obviously, Jayden was even bigger and stronger than Caleb Williams, but their speed looks identical. Jayden 6'4", 220 pounds. Caleb Williams 6'1" on a good day, not 220 pounds. I think if we're being honest, Miller is the guy right now. And he's also going to have a very long leash. He's earned it for one thing. Miller's not going to be looking over his shoulder if he makes a mistake. If he throws an interception, he's not going to have to worry about, I'm coming out in the next series. That's not happening. Now, if he throws 3 or 4 in a row, maybe for that game, he's coming out. That's not who Miller is. But let's say there's a scenario where Jayden is next man up. Doesn't matter why, for whatever the reason could be. I wonder, would Coach Riley, would he be willing to be a little bit more, exotic with the play calling with Jayden playing quarterback compared to Miller? And I think I'm really focused in right now on the RPO, the run pass option package that USC uses. There's that RPO package where Caleb Williams will run towards the line of scrimmage, and then he'll still get a pass off. I mean, it's a deadly play call. It's impossible for a defense to defend unless they guess perfectly. And then, obviously RPO, run pass option. If he doesn't throw the ball, if he sees the crease, he's going to keep it. He's going to take off for a big gain. I'd like to see some of that same type of play calling with Miller Moss. Remember, he was running touchdowns last year. They weren't soft runs. He took some contact. He had some hits on his way crossing the goal line. I think Miller can. In fact, he was disappointed during some of the spring practices that he wasn't getting hit enough. He wanted to get hit. They wear the yellow jersey for a reason. Miller understands that. But right now, I talked about it briefly on yesterday's episode of Locked on USC. PRPs, player run practices, they're getting geared up right now. Miller is going to be the leader of the pack. Okay. He is the alpha dog out there right now. When he barks, the team jumps. I'll be 100% honest. For me personally, I would rather watch the player run practices than the official practices that we see during the fall, during the spring. Tell you why. This is where a lot of the smack talk takes place, right? This is where the players are holding each other accountable. You don't have the coaches telling them what to do. This is where you see the chemistry start to develop. And here's what's so interesting about this team in 2024. Most teams, their season depends on the quarterback being able to, they have to be the difference maker. If you don't have a quarterback, you're not going to go very far. With Lincoln Riley as the head coach, you're always going to have good quarterback play. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. So I keep going back to what Coach Riley said about, how he's going to use the quarterbacks differently in 2024 with regards to their relationship with the skill players, wide receivers. I'm not saying that Coach Riley is going to be a conservative play caller this season, but as long as the offense protects the ball, which is a strength of Miller. Again, I understand Maiava is a little bit more riskier, but those interception numbers, they stand out. So if USC's defense is just competent in 2024 with their quarterback play, the offense is going to be just fine. This is a playoff team. So the ceilings for both quarterbacks at USC, sky high. In fact, don't even put a roof on the building. But the ceilings are different for different reasons. Who are you going with? Who's your quarterback? You know where I'm at. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers, you're going to get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 that you can bet on the point spreads, the money lines. You like doing the player prop bets? Get over there. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right. As you know, every week I do the Inside the Trojan Huddle panel show over there on WeAreRC.com. A couple of questions came up. Thought I'd bring them over here. Was there a USC opponent that you had nothing but respect for? As far as teams, look, there's only one answer. You might disagree. Okay. No one's perfect. But Notre Dame is the only answer when it comes to who does USC, as far as opponents, who do they respect? That's the team. This is why I'm so passionate about the series not being curb stomped like Colin Cowherd suggested. Just not having it. Look, if you watch this show enough, my everydayers, they know where I stand on this, especially when it comes to conference love. I have none. It's USC versus the world. I'm not one of those, the SEC clap, clap, clap type of guys. Big Ten conference, clap, clap, clap. No. Pac-12 football, no. USC, everybody else. But the question wasn't, very specific. So I was trying to think of some individual players that I respected. And I'm sure there's been one or two over the years, but nobody's popping into my mind. Help me out here. Which players did you respect? Again, I'm sure there's a few out there that I did, but usually they were beating USC, so I kind of blocked those out. I can tell you right now, Vince Young wasn't one of them. Knee down. Anyways, on a similar note, here's another question. If you had to pick 3 head coaches in your lifetime, college head coaches, who are the top 3? And I'm going to make this easy for you. You cannot vote for John McKay or Pete Carroll. Okay? So no USC coaches. in your top 3 college football coaches of all time. Here's mine. Bear Bryant. You got to give credit where credit's due. Dude did it for a long time, and he was really good at it. Nick Saban, he's got the trophies, he's got those rings. Those guys are in the discussion. You don't have to agree, but they are definitely in the discussion. But if you had to choose number 3, this is where I think things get a little more difficult. Urban Meyer, Joe Paterno, they don't make the cut. I'll tell you why. Way too much baggage. Yeah, some of the stuff that happens off the field matters. So yeah, Urban Meyer, Joe Paterno, no, they don't make it. My 2 choices that if I had to pick one, it would come down between Bobby Bowden and Bill Snyder. Who do you have? I mean, remember, Bobby did it forever at Florida State. And when he left the game, he was the game's winningest coach. You got to give some respect to that. Bill Snyder and Chris Arledge made a great argument for it, and it's why he probably deserves some heavy consideration. He took a bottom feeder program and made them competitive. Some of you might be old enough to remember Chris Dufresne. He used to do the bottom 10 list in the LA Times. Kansas State, every single week, number 1 in the bottom 10. That team never won a game. And if they did, they beat Rice. And look, the way he did it, he had to do it. He did what he had to do. A lot of JC players, a lot of 2-year transfer players in. But eventually he had that culture built, and then recruits started to come in. We're not talking 4 stars. We're not talking 5 stars. We're talking the Will Durdigs of the world, the 2 stars, 3-star players. Will Durding went to Washington State. But it was that type of caliber of player. There's a player I respected the hell out of. It took me to get to this segment. Will Durding, Washington State. That dude was a dude. Pat Tillman, Arizona State. May he rest in peace. All right, let me get back to this. So, Bill Snyder, Kansas State. Think about this. They went from bottom feeder. I mean, the bottom of the bottom feeders. They beat USC twice, back-to-back seasons. Once at the Coliseum. First, that was the game where Troy Polamalu kind of leveled Aaron Lockett on that punt return. One of the most vicious hits I've ever seen. And credit to Aaron Lockett. Dude got up. And he wasn't a big kid. Small. 5'9", maybe. Anyways. And then the following year, out there in Manhattan, Kansas, man, Mike Williams, BMW, coach BMW, dropped so many passes. USC was turning the ball over. They lost that game. It was another close loss. Both of those games were close. USC just ended up losing them. So I think you know where I'm leaning on that one. I got Bill Snyder. I agree with Chris. That's the dude. Now, here's the hard part. You can only pick one USC head coach. And I get they were from different eras. But if you had to choose between Pete Carroll and John McKay, who are you picking? I have a feeling McKay could have done it when Pete Carroll was coaching at USC. Same era, during that era. They were 2 different personalities, though. Both were very quick-witted. But Coach McKay, he would let you know. Yeah, different personalities. Different eras. Who would you pick? I'm not going to tell you who I'm picking. I'm a little bit more old school. I would love to see what John McKay could have done. We know what Pete Carroll has done in the modern, finger quotes, age of college football. But we just saw Nick Saban leave. I wonder how Coach McKay would have handled this NIL, the transfer portal. We know that his biggest regret was going to the NFL. So there you go. Another episode Locked on USC in the books. A lot to talk about. Hit me up in the comment section. We talked about recruiting. We talked about the quarterbacks. We talked about some fun off the field stuff. Coaches, teams, players you respect, don't respect. Let me know. I'll be back with another episode tomorrow. I'll have more recruiting news. I'm sure something will break. We'll find something else to talk about as well. That's why you make Locked on USC your first listen every day. Part of the Locked on Network. 5 times a week. So until then, everyone, you know what to do.